Okay, we are recording now, and just informing everyone that it will be recorded, so we have so people could watch later. We will be doing the election inside of Zoom, so when we're ready to have a ballot, it will just pop up on your screen, and you can just press the buttons for who you want to vote for, and then hit submit, and we'll have that polling come through automatically. And let me mute everyone because we're already getting some feedback. And then one other thing is, if you go to the stmtux.org/events, you will see one of the events is the annual meeting, and that's where the Zoom link is. But also all of the materials that we're going to be sharing in the meeting that would normally be handouts, all of those materials are in the are on that page, on that web page. So all you have to do is go to stmtux.org/events, and you will have access to all of the materials that we're presenting. There is an agenda there as well, and I think the first thing is Father Rick. So take it away.
Good morning, everybody, and thank you for joining in this extraordinary way. I just got a notification that my internet is unstable, so you know, there's one more thing about me that's unstable. But if I break up, somebody just chat or something. I'm going to open the chat section too, so that we can see. All right, if anybody says anything. So let's begin with a prayer from the Book of Common Prayer. This is for a church, convention, or meeting. Almighty and ever-living God, source of all wisdom and understanding, be present with those who take counsel in St. Mary's Church for the renewal and mission of your church. Teach us in all things to seek first your honor and glory. Guide us to perceive what is right, and grant us both the courage to pursue it and the grace to accomplish it. Through Jesus Christ, our Lord. Amen. So I call this annual meeting of the Corporation of St. Mary's in Tuxedo Episcopal Church to order. And now there is on the website the minutes from last year's meeting. And I hope that you have had a chance to take a look at those. And if you need a minute, let me know. Otherwise, if someone would like to move to accept the minutes from 2019 as presented. Okay, so it's been moved. Has it been seconded?
I second.
Okay, so by a show of hands, all in favor of accepting the minutes from last year? All right, looks like it's unanimous. So before we get into business, a word of inspiration from our senior warden, Lily Newhouser.
Good morning, everybody. In thinking about what I was going to say, I thought, oh, I'm not going to say the same old thing, except for thank you to everyone for joining and all you've done in the past year. I wanted to read a few words from the rector of St. Luke's Gladstone, prior rector, Canon John Morrow, who ferried me my first 25 years in the Episcopal Church from baptism through marriage. And he says these words at many of the whether it be a baptism, a funeral, a wedding, to those in attendance. And I thought I'd read them to you. Whether it be for a baptism or a funeral, Dad would remind us to look up, that the ceiling of the church, like so many, is shaped after the hull of a ship. We journey together through the swells that take us up through the good times and down through the bad. As a community, we can endure almost anything, and there is only one direction to look for leadership, and that is up. Thy will be done. Say it over and over. It's what will get us through. Peace, my friends, we will prevail. Thank you.
That was beautiful. And now the teller of elections will explain the process.
Okay, so hopefully everyone can see this. We have in the same web page that I talked about, we have a list of vestry nominees. These are the 2021 nominees that are being put forward by the nominations, the vestry, which is the nominating committee. And there are, so Dennis Trotter for his first term as junior warden, Barb Anderson to fill Mr. Trotter's unexpired term of 2 years, Joanne Hanson for her first full term. She's currently serving a partial term that was made open when Lily moved to warden. George Robertson for his first full term, and Bill Steinman for his second full term.
There is a mechanism for nominations from the floor. However, I don't anticipate there being any. If there's someone here who's not already on the vestry and wants to nominate someone, I guess go ahead. Otherwise, I'd like to declare the nominations closed. All right, let's begin the balloting, Pete.
Okay. So you should see something pop up on your screen. Take a moment. Go ahead and vote, and then hit submit. Father Rick, do you want to continue as people vote, or how do you want to?
Yes, the bylaws state that the balloting needs to be open for an hour. I can't imagine a vestry election being so fraught as to need to take an hour, but that's what it says. So let's give it until the end of the meeting, and in case anyone has some difficulty. And if you do, go on the chat function and let Pete know, and we can try to help you, but otherwise it should be pretty straightforward. So I'd like to continue the meeting with reports, and we'll start with the financial report.
So good morning, everybody, and ready to discuss the results for 2020. I can only tell you that in so many areas in which this year was sort of upside down from a COVID perspective in just about every facet of our lives, I have to admit that from a financial perspective, it was sort of the same thing. Some very unexpected results, although in the big picture, with the grace of God and with the diocese, we were able to get through the year and handle a number of things that occurred. And so from that perspective, I would consider ourselves fortunate to be in the position that we are, despite everything that occurred. And I will give you some details, but largely speaking, when you have the situation that we had where there was not full services and not a lot of other things going on, there's a very, very, very small bittersweet part of that says that from a operating perspective, there were not a lot of planned expenditures that actually took place. So for whatever that really means, what it ultimately means is that we were able to financially get through a very difficult year in a twisted but relatively safe way. So with that, I'll just talk a little bit about from line to line. For the year, we actually ended up with a surplus of about $85,000 as compared to what would have been a break even for the budget. And there's a lot of reasons for that. First, if we look at pledges, clearly the ability to contact, to meet, to discuss things, to have presentations during the services, to continue to discuss stewardship, fell without the opportunity to do that. We had a budget of $160,000. We ended up at $142,000. which I think, considering everything that went on and where we were in 2019, was a pretty good effort. If you look at collections, I don't think anybody would be surprised about the fact that a number of these collections encompass those that happen at church, and clearly that was impacted. Our endowment distributions were essentially the same as what was budgeted. The commentary that I put there, I actually see now is for the line below. Our special events cycle, if you will, was significantly impacted. As you know, we usually have a progressive dinner or a dinner in the nave, which is our single largest fundraiser. That clearly did not occur in 2020. We did have a very successful small fall festival cocktails that brought in a certain amount of income that I think on a go-forward basis, hopefully with the grace of God, will continue, because I think that that was a new and different success that we can do in addition to other things. Of most significance, many of you probably already are aware of this, we were rewarded a diocesan grant of $140,000 during 2020. And the purpose of the grant was to help offset our costs of payroll, insurance, and utilities. So obviously that demonstrates or illustrates why we ended up in a relatively positive situation. From an expenses perspective, our property related costs in 2020 were higher than budgeted. That had a lot to do with our office renovation. As you know, the preschool was closed this year. We'll talk a little bit about that as well. But we had made a decision that we would repurpose that area as the new office so that we could use the existing area for outreach, thrift shop, things of that nature. Those decisions haven't been finalized, but that largely was the reason for that. And as we looked at the year, there was certainly the opportunity to apply those funds to be able to do that as a one-time cost. From a benefits and compensation perspective, again, as we talk about, the pandemic, having less of an expense as well as less of an income, we didn't have choir salaries. There were incentives to reduce our pension costs from the diocese. We had some changes in personnel, and we never really got off the ground with a expected and totally committed plan for a Sunday school. Our functions expenses were a little bit higher than budget. Our diocesan assessment was actually reduced by 25%. However, as I won't get into it in grave details, but you are aware that we did make a decision that we had to close the preschool for a number of different reasons, due to the fact that it was further impacted by the pandemic and made a result that it ended up closing earlier than we even anticipated. There were a number of costs that had to be absorbed by the operations budget in order to complete that process. So that's really, as you can see, a lot of ups and downs, a lot of abnormalities. And again, fortunately, we're in a place that's not, I'm not going to call it a happy place, but I'll call it a safe place for right now. So any questions? Again, when you think about trying to budget, it's still, as you would all understand, a very tenuous situation. Not really sure, what will happen and when that will happen. So we had to take a relatively conservative approach. Our pledges were budgeted for 2021 at 130,000. That's less than 2020, but what we would hope to be a realistic number. We've budgeted less collections, but again, with an expectation that at some point in time, we'll be able to increase the number of attendees and hopefully do better from that perspective. Our endowment distributions have a slight increase. You are probably aware that the way in which we budget those distributions is based upon the previous 3-year average value of the endowments, and then at a certain 7% as to what will be distributed, and that's how that number was arrived there. From a special events perspective, we budgeted the amount, sorry for the spelling, we budgeted an amount that was consistent with how we did on the cocktail event last year. Again, that's conservative. Perhaps by the time October and November comes around, we'll be able to do much more things, but right now that's just difficult to budget for. So obviously the grant money that we got in 2020 is not something for 2021. However, it's important to know that about $40,000 of that $100,000 still remains in our account that will be used to cover costs into 2021. From an expense perspective, we expect that we would have less costs incurred because of the fact that we don't have this renovation that we had last year. However, you may be aware that we recently completed a study for the whole church and rectory, and it's going to be a long process. I won't spend time now about it, but it calls for a number of prioritized capital improvements that need to be done in order to realistically preserve the property and repair the symptoms of a lot of things that have deteriorated, the result of which deteriorated in the property that we have here right now. So that number might be changing, but we've done our best right now to figure out what we think that will be. We expect our admin costs to be consistent with last year. We expect that our benefit comps compared to what last year was will be less. We will have lower total payroll costs. Our Sunday school consideration is still on hold, and our Q1 assessment is still is reduced. We don't know what's going to happen for the rest of the year. And the biggest difference in the function parts, if you will, is that we don't have any recurring financial obligation from the preschool. So that was a big piece of that. So the budget's showing a loss of about $24,000 or deficit, if you will. It's important to note that at the beginning of the year, the cash on hand for the church and the operating budget is in an amount that far exceeds the $24,000. And if you remember before, I indicated that there was about $40,000 of carryover of the grant funds. So, that doesn't really show from a P&L perspective, but from, excuse me, from a cash management perspective, I think that, again, knowing how tenuous and unpredictable 2021 will be, we've done our best to try to make sure that we don't have any big known exposures, and that's where we sit. Any questions? Okay, Pete. Okay, so I wanted to go over, update where we were with our endowment funds, and I'm going to talk a little bit numerically. I'm going to talk briefly about what's going on with the funds, and hopefully ask Joanne to talk a little bit further in detail on what's going on with our investment committee and the funds. But simply stated, at the end of 2019, the value of the funds was about $3.24 million. At the end of 2020, it's about $3.27 million. If you recall, that takes into the fact that there were $200,000 of distributions. So if you wanted to just look year to year on appreciable value and you added that back, you'd probably be looking at an increase of about 7%. Now, I think we're all knowledgeable enough to know all of the things that happen in the market, from the probably 18% drop that we saw here by the middle of April to having it all crawl back and shift money around and things of that nature. So I think from that perspective, having a relatively conservative portfolio resulted in probably what could be best expected as a preservation of that which we already had going into the year. we've made a decision to move the management of our endowment funds from Vanguard to a firm named Brown Brothers Harriman, which is the investment manager for the Episcopal Charities Foundation. I'm sorry, Joanne, can you kind of pick that up? I don't want to say anything wrong. If you don't mind.
For the Church Investment Group, and also for the Diocese of New York. So Brown Brothers Harriman is referred to as what's called an outsourced chief investment officer, an OCIO. And the concept is that they are managing the endowment on an active basis, on a full-time basis, the way the church pension group is managed on behalf of the clergy. And the motivation for moving, so I can give you some perspective, is that Brown Brothers accounts were up 15% last year in comparison to what the performance of the endowment of St. Mary's in its current management form. So the concept is to both earn, well, I'm going to flip it around. The important thing, and Brown Brothers is very focused on preserving capital and making sure that the endowment does not incur losses. But as a component of that, with a base of investing in stable, well-run companies, they are looking to grow the endowment. And that combination has worked well for the Diocese of New York. And that is why a presentation was done by the Church Investment Group and Brown Brothers Harriman to the vestry, who chose to make this transition. So it's the pandemic has slowed it down, but that this should be happening, I think, on Tuesday, if it hasn't already, Tuesday or Wednesday of next week. Another piece that's important to some of you is that the endowment Church Investment Group and Brown Brothers Harriman are both Principles of Responsible Investor signatories, the UNPRI, as it's referred to, and are conscious of environmental, social, and governance factors in the way they invest. And this is very much oriented to protecting the endowment so that we invest in companies that have good policies in all of these areas. And I know this is something that was referenced George by name, very important to George Thurston, and something that he had encouraged the vestry and St. Mary's to do over a period of time. So we hope that we will benefit from the performance that Brown Brothers saw this year, and going forward on behalf of the endowment, so that we will have more for the missions of St. Mary's and for the capital improvements that are coming up.
Thanks, Joanne. I just want to take one quick second. I mean, for a number of years, we sort of we sort of just spun wheels as far as looking at investments. We were very fortunate that we were in a position where the market was so helpful. Can't emphasize enough the importance of the fact that when Joanne joined, and her interest in doing this came at a time when the pandemic hit. And so considering all those things around, and now knowing that we are being counseled by those that counsel for hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars, I can only say that she's done a lot of stuff, a lot of important things to get us here. And I appreciate the fact that she's taken this on and put us in a much better place. So thank you for that.
Well, and I have to say that Frank has labored long and hard in the vineyard. I am certainly humbled and a bit intimidated to be stepping into Frank's shoes on tracking St. Mary's budget and finances. And I hope that I can begin to do as good a job as he has done and served as faithfully as he has.
Thank you. Any other financial questions? Okay.
This is George Robertson.
Oh, hi, George.
Just a question, qualitative probably, but the concern of comparing the 7% to the 15%, was that 15% made by doubling the risk, or was it made by better quality and better, so-called alpha?
I would say it would actually, I would consider it to be somewhat less risk. That was on a portfolio of, and I thank you for I should have pointed that out because that's an obvious one way to get higher returns, but that was on a return of 65% equities and 35% bonds. St. Mary's right now, we've benefited from the run up in equities over this period of time, going back to 2011, when I think, as I understand it, the portfolio was sort of 50-50. Now, St. Mary's in its current configuration at Vanguard is about 70-30. So our hope is actually to take the risk down as we make this transition. Does that make sense to everybody, what I'm talking about, the 65-35, 70-30?
George again, did Brown Brothers comment on the extraordinary relationship of equity and bonds to the U.S. economy right now?
I mean, certainly, you know, there's the bond situation, and the low returns in bonds poses a significant challenge to endowments, and how do they make the returns that we're going to be spending, have spent in the past, and will be spending in the future. The market has made an incredible recovery from a downfall assessment of, in the face of the pandemic. The Federal Reserve and fiscal policy have really stepped in to put a lot of money into the economy. And so that has incented the stock market to go up. And, you know, that is a little bit of I mean, clearly the stock market is looking through where we are today with high unemployment and economic, tough, real economic conditions. It is looking through to the fiscal stimulus they anticipate with the new administration, and to the impact of the vaccine helping us to get back to normal. So it's a situation where we've benefited from a significant rise in the market, but it's a somewhat tricky situation going into 2020 in terms of what the market will do next.
Okay. Last thought, these are probably words such that you should probably run away from me screaming, but past lives, I've been a chief investment officer at a couple of large institutions, and my last active role on the street was I was on the investment committee for Morgan Stanley Investment Management. So put me to work if I can be of any help.
Absolutely. That's great to know.
Okay, Pete, I have nothing further. Thank you all. Appreciate it.
Thank you, George. Thank you to Frank and Joanne for this report. And George, be assured, we will be knocking on your door very soon for some advice. So the next item on our list is the outreach report given by our own Sue Haywood.
Sorry, I just disappeared to put the dogs out. They were going berserk. Okay, at any time as we go through this, stop me if you have a question, okay? The bank balance on the start of the year, 14,898. At the end of the year, 11,184. Then on top of that, we had an income in 2020 of 117,110. This income was from our cutting fund, the percentage from the cutting fund endowment, which came in total in that year to 14,208. Episcopal Charities grants. We apply for these grants for St. Mary's involvement with other charities or other organizations that we are working with. So this last year in 2020, we got a grant of 8,500, which came to us for use with the food pantry. We just pass it straight on to the food pantry. For Helping Hands, we got 7,500. That went down quite a bit because there'd been some problems with some failed activities at Helping Hands, but it's still a very good organization. Then we could apply for COVID relief for things you had to do to alter how you serve the people. And they paid us 5,000, which we asked for and made a list of what was needed. We also applied for the Board of Managers of Episcopal Church for the food pantry and received 5,000. Joanne Hansen asked me, who are the Board of Managers? The Board of Managers, this is the title, Board of Managers of the Diocesan Missionary and Church Extension Society of the Protestant Episcopal Church in the Diocese of New York. Okay, so we just call them the Board of Managers.
Translation, it's the Diocese of New York.
It is the Diocese of New York, yes. I can't scroll this down, can I? No. So from the rest of the money that we that came up to the income was literally donations from individuals. So from individuals and a couple of companies, 76,902. So thank you to everyone who donated. When we ask for donations, people either donate online or with checks, and they can state where they want their donation to go. If it just simply says outreach, that money is used locally. And locally is anything from Suffern to Newburgh. Newburgh Habitat is in our houses we are building and renovating are in Newburgh. Then you can donate being specific as to where you want the money to go. And then some of those donations are for local and some are for international projects and appeals, but we use them wherever the donor directs. There has been some misunderstanding about that in the past. We were unable to have any income generating events in 2020. Our yard sales were cancelled as well. Instead, St. Mary's led the way in coordinating Tuxedo's outreach efforts, bringing together all institutions in Tuxedo town and village and forming a system of area liaisons to assist our neighbours in need during the lockdown and beyond. We also held a 3-week-long clothing drive at Tuxedo train station. This was during the lockdown, followed by free distribution of clothing for families. Okay, so that's our income. Expenditure, how we expend our money to charitable organizations that we work with personally, individuals and families in need, occasionally national emergencies. In 2020, we didn't give as much as we have done in the past. The emergencies were not in our sphere. And support for CareU in South Africa, impoverished families suffering from the effects of HIV/AIDS. And looking at the people who are at this meeting, you all know about that, I think. I visit them every year. It's a very personal thing. We're very much in control of what happens and how our money is used. Now, the total of our expenditure in 2020 was 120,825. This was divided up. We gave donations to Episcopal of 5,750. Slopesburg Community Food Pantry, we gave donations of 4,000, plus the Episcopal Charities and Board of Managers grants, which came to 13,500. We gave to Helping Hands 1,250, plus Episcopal Charities grants of 12,500. We gave preschool scholarships to enable people who couldn't afford the fees. We gave $5,000. Baker High School scholarships, if they're applying for our scholarship, they write an essay saying what they want to do and where they want to go and what their aspirations are. We choose the 2 best applicants. They got 750 each. We sponsored 13 kids to the Tuxedo summer camp to the tune of 5,200. This is down 3,000 from last year because many families were nervous about sending their children during COVID to go to the camp. We bought ShopRite gift cards for Tuxedo families to the tune of $13,900, getting a 20% discount, and we took that always in extra cards. So though we paid $13,900, we got that plus 20% in value back. Most of those were distributed through the school in the summer and Thanksgiving and Christmas, $100 for each of the families who are whose children are on free meals. And then there are a few other people as well, other families we donated to separately. We bought an air filtration unit for the basement of the Methodist Church, where the Sloatsburg Food Pantry is operated from. During COVID, people are in very close contact there, and they felt the need for a filtration system that would clear the air overnight and start again. We donated to Oasis Patterson $500 for food. This is a wonderful organization that educates women and children and helps them to get out of the circle of poverty. Really, I think my next paragraph, I should really go to individuals and local families rather than CareU. The individuals and local families, we have paid utility, rent, medical, school supply, childcare, tree removal, clothing, computer repair, and insurance bills for families in need. These families have been referred to us through guidance counselors in the schools in Sloatsburg, Suffern, and Tuxedo, and also by individuals in town who have noticed neighbors having problems paying their bills. People are very diffident about actually coming and asking. It's usually someone kindly refers them, and we always respond. And I don't hand out money to the people, but I get the bills and I pay the bills directly, whether it's a landlord or an insurance company or a bank or whatever. Then going back to CareU, $29,000 over the year. We provided monthly food parcels, uniforms, clothing, school supplies, equipment for preschool, and Christmas bonuses for the families of 80 caregivers. They all got the equivalent of about $50, which is big time for them. In the donations to CareU, there are a lot of other people beyond our own parishioners involved, plus St. John's in Ramsey and a number of parishioners there. Also, my daughter's company, Health and Wellness, is wonderful at responding. They will ask me, what do you need? Do you want 2,000? Do you want 2,500? And I explain what we're doing and they give it to me straight away. Any questions on our outgoings? No?
Actually, Sue, I just had one question to understand magnitude. So in total, this was about $120,000 this year.
Yeah.
In 2019, is this significantly higher than we've done historically, or about the same?
It's higher. I should have looked at the exact numbers, but I didn't, I'm afraid. I think it was about 90 last year.
Okay.
No,
Thank you.
It's been more because of COVID, much more.
Well, yeah, and thank you all for everyone on that committee who's stepped up to. That was my sense, that St. Mary's has really stepped up.
Sue, you're muted. Sue, you're on mute.
Okay. Okay, so did you hear 2019, we had about 90,000 in distribution. I don't have the numbers just beside me at the moment. So Sloatsburg Food Pantry, basically we work very closely. If people apply to me, to St. Mary's, and they need food, we get them to bring it up here, etc. If they see families who need more than food, they will call me and I will help with what else, we will help with whatever else is needed. Dennis Dennis and Pete have been great as drivers, and lots of other people have been involved. Though we older people have had to stand back a little bit because of a lot of the distribution was outdoors. Some was at the Methodist Church, where you were in very close proximity. So Susan and Joyce liked to use their families and their teenagers where they were close together and they could take their masks off as well. The contrast here, 2020, the food pantry continues to serve Suffolk, Sloatsburg, Hilburn and Tuxedo, but total households served in 2019 was 2,727. In 2020, it was 5,189. Opening twice a month, January 20, 237 households. In May 20, it went up to 795. And in December, where they could only open once, there were 364 households. The new families in 2019 were 91. In 2020, they had 698 new families. The whole quantity of food has gone up enormously. The pantry also does a lot of opening for individual families who call them up at any time and are in a crisis. Episcopal, as I say, some people don't realize that the houses are up in Newburgh, and Prudence and George Thurston and Father Rick are on the board. Our 7th Habitat house was completed, dedicated and handed over in August, and now we're looking to raise 75,000 towards the 8th house. Another section of outreach is pastoral care, led by Jane and Lily. Serving on the outreach committee, I would like to acknowledge everybody. I'm on the board of Helping Hands, Care You and the Food Pantry, Father Rick, the Food Pantry and Episcopal. Prudence and George represent us on Episcopal board, Lily and Jane Pastoral Care, then others helping us in many ways, Sandy Taylor, Gillian Ballard, Barbara Anderson, Jim Hayes, Dana Rocaseca was on the board, on the Food Pantry board, but has had to drop out because of her family responsibilities. Janet Galaska, Inga Grutrich, Elizabeth Ocheng, Paula Sink, Sally Sonny, Odetta Begel, and Melissa Rubini. Thank you all for helping us. And just to follow, to put us into a calm realization of why we do all this. Jesus' words, "For I was hungry," from Matthew, "and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger, and you invited me in. I needed clothes, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you looked after me. I was in prison, and you came to visit me. Truly, I tell you, whatever you did for one of the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did for me." And taking that and interpreting it into the practical side, St. Mary's Outreach seeks to serve Christ with our time, our talent, and our treasure. And we address the problems of hunger, homelessness, poverty, sickness, and inequality of educational opportunity. We respond to national disasters locally, nationally, and internationally. And anyone who wishes to join the committee will be very welcome. Thank you. Any questions?
No,
Thank you, Sue.
go ahead.
Oh, what's your question, Wendy?
No, I just wanted to say, Sue, thank God for you. You're wonderful. And I love everything you do.
Thank you. You're very kind.
And I love your words.
Okay.
I would like to point out that it's very traditional in Episcopal churches to have sort of different funds for outreach. There's the outreach fund itself, but there's also what is known as the rector's discretionary fund. And according to our agreements, the church offerings come into the discretionary fund in the amount of $3,000 per year. And also people can make donations to that directly if they wish. And as the name implies, it is sort of my fund to help people in need. And typically that's the way it works in a church. But here at St. Mary's, it's really fantastic to be able to work with Sue. And so the outreach committee and the outreach funds and the discretionary funds sort of work hand in hand. And so there's even more that we have done that isn't quite included in that report, as those disbursements are confidential. But people are helped with, again, car insurance, bills, medical problems. We've purchased much needed medical equipment, oxygen tanks for people. So there's a lot that goes on behind the scenes at St. Mary's. And really, we can say without any kind of exaggeration, that St. Mary's is the beating heart of Tuxedo. And I'm very proud to be a part of it. I'm very proud of Sue and everyone who serves on the outreach committee and who volunteers their time and who gives so generously of their funds.
We also deal with a lot of goods. At the moment, I have somebody dropping things off this afternoon in the chapel for another family to pick up in the morning, and things like a crib and baby equipment, etc. We are the go-between. We're known to be the go-between. Also, I would like to say that there should be a treasurer. Since Andy Jackson died, he was the treasurer and he controlled all the money. Nobody wants the job. So I'm doing both. I'm not complaining, but I don't think if we were to be audited, it would be very good. However, with COVID, it's actually very efficient. You all seem to trust me, and actually I look at my numbers there and I think I'm $1 out. Forgive me. I think I'm $1 out in 117,110.
Well, whenever a decision needs to be made, Sue always phones me. We are in almost daily conversations about things, and we always have a meeting of the minds, and just so there are more eyes on what's going on. So we do try to cover our bases. Okay, well, I guess that brings us down to my report. To my dear brothers and sisters in Christ, without overstating the obvious, 2020 was a year of immense challenges for us all in our personal, work, and community life. Churches everywhere, and especially here at St. Mary's, had to make difficult decisions, sometimes immediately. We had to quickly reinvent the wheel in many circumstances. Things that were part of our well-worn routines were quickly abandoned due to health concerns, and new ways of being the church emerged. In some cases, we longed to get back to the familiar things, singing hymns, receiving the sacrament in both kinds at the altar rail, and to coffee hour, just to name a few. One silver lining has been that being forced to meet the challenges before us, new ideas have emerged and will likely remain with us, such as live streaming our services. Despite the limitations on our physical presence, St. Mary's services were able to be seen by a broader group of people than ever before from around our country and even other parts of the world. Beginning in mid-March, a variety of new services were added to our online offering, including morning and evening prayer, Compline, and Stations of the Cross and benediction during Lent. Pete and I even managed to pull off a two-man great vigil of Easter. Beginning in July, with the permission of the bishop, we returned to limited in-person services, Sunday at 10 a.m. in the church and Wednesday at 10 a.m., initially on the lawn of the rectory until the weather changed and we moved to the St. Mark's altar in the church. We are committed to the highest level of safety possible and continue to monitor the situation as the pandemic unfolds. It is for this reason that we continue to limit in-person worship to 2 services weekly, with limited altar guild functions. Thank you, Wendy, for your valiant efforts in the past few months. Everything else remains online, and all daily operations are handled virtually if possible. We couldn't have imagined it then, but our transition to the cloud-based Google for Nonprofits a few years ago has been an incredibly helpful tool. Once we get the all clear to resume all in-person activities, we will be looking to you to help with the reboot by becoming involved in the many ministries of our parish. A great deal of emphasis will need to be given to revitalizing our ministry to children and youth, and I will need your help. By the numbers, there were 1,183 communions, 101 celebrations of the Holy Eucharist, 142 daily offices read, 2 marriages, 6 burials, and 3 baptisms. All the baptisms took place privately in homes due to the pandemic. Beginning in June, we were pleased to have our Director of Music, Sheldon Eldridge, back at the organ console. Music plays a vital role in our worship, and I am grateful to him for his love and dedication to St. Mary's, and to our talented musicians, Aileen, Alex, and Bruce, for their ministry among us. I think I speak for Sheldon when I say that we are both looking forward to our music program coming back better than ever. From the very beginning of the pandemic, St. Mary's stepped up to meet the needs of our community by coordinating with representatives from each neighborhood in Tuxedo, as well as with all of the institutions and organizations, to see that no one went without food or medicines. I am very proud of everyone for their part in the effort, as well as for our strong partnership with the Sloatsburg Food Pantry, whose work grew exponentially with the need. 2020 was the year to end all years on the outreach front, and Sue Haywood, our indomitable outreach chair, went above and beyond even her normal laudable service during the service in serving Christ in the least and the last. We have been in almost daily communication, and as you can tell from her report, a great deal of good was done. Brava, Sue, and thanks you to everyone who gave so generously. Due to both the pandemic and financial considerations, several painful decisions had to be made. First, we had to close our preschool. It had been losing money for years, and with the new universal pre-K offered by the public school system, it was clear that the time had come to say goodbye to this ministry. We were able to pay our teachers through the end of their contract year in August, and Miss Ida, our former head of school, is now working happily at the preschool program at the Tuxedo Park School. Another difficult decision was made when it became clear that we were not going to be able to experience anything like normal for many months to come, possibly well into 2021. I decided it was best to close down the office indefinitely and to eliminate the position of parish administrator. I am deeply grateful to Lisa Favia for her years of dedicated service to St. Mary's, and we wish her good health and all of life's blessings. Sometime later in 2021, we hope to be able to reevaluate our administrative needs, which have changed with time and circumstances and technology, and look to the possibility of a new hire in that department. Even though there was much that could be accomplished online, there are still tasks that require a physical presence. I am grateful to Lily and to our fantastic bookkeeper, Natalia, who together with me worked out a socially distant rotation for administrative tasks such that everything gets done with only one of us in the office at a time. Thank you, team. Another bit of silver lining is that we have found a new group of cleaners all in one family who have been keeping the church looking better than it has in a long time. So thank you to Maria and to the clean team. I would also like to thank Greg Stevens for his many years of service here at St. Mary's. Greg recently retired from his volunteer role overseeing the churchyard. If this is of interest of you, please do let me know. Despite the closing of the preschool and temporary cessation of office activities, we have nonetheless been working behind the scenes with an eye toward the future. I would like to thank the small group who met virtually to brainstorm how we will use our physical space in the post-COVID world. The current office in the Undercroft was deemed too tight and stuffy to allow for the distancing and air circulation that we need for people to feel safe. It was therefore proposed that the rector, vestry, and administration be moved to the front half of French House, which is the actual name of the former preschool. Over the summer and fall, our very talented carpenter, Ivers, and his helper have been busy transforming the former front classroom into a bright, airy, and spacious place for us to do our day-to-day work. The back half of the building will remain configured as a classroom and be called St. Mary's Family Room. It will serve as a multifunction space for Sunday school, youth events, and the like. We will also have the flexibility to use the Samaripa Room with much more than we have in the past. And once a few finishing touches are complete, we will be able to move into our new home, and I look forward to showing it to you in person. So what will become of the current office space? That space will be reimagined as the Emporium, a church shop filled with everything from throw pillows to fine cookware and antiques, which have been donated to the church. We even have a mascot, Woodrow the Woodchuck. Many thanks to Lily for bringing this idea to life, and to our generous donors who have already stocked us to the gills, especially Sarah and John Cassis, who provided many wonderful items, as well as some beautiful furniture for my new office. We envision the Emporium being open initially one day during the week and on Sundays before and after the service. In the not too distant future, we plan to embark upon a capital campaign that was temporarily derailed due to the pandemic. But even before that, we will need to focus attention on certain critical areas in need of repair in both the church and the rectory, as outlined by a comprehensive existing conditions report compiled over the course of 2019 and 2020 by the architect Walter Sedovich. Additionally, in consultation with the Tuxedo Park Police Department, we are looking at ways to increase security on our campus. One of those ways is by installing security cameras that we can share, with which we can share the IP address, so the police will be able to monitor our grounds while no one is here. As you can tell from my report so far, it takes the dedication of many to make a church like St. Mary's operate smoothly. The vestry of St. Mary's is absolutely integral to our mission. I rely heavily on their support and wisdom, and am grateful for the differing gifts and perspectives each member brings to the table. But nothing lasts forever, and as of today, we are saying adieu to two of our members, Junior Warden Billy Mincy and Treasurer Frank Favia. The Junior Warden traditionally oversees buildings and grounds, and with his architectural expertise, Billy has played a vital role in undertaking an exhaustive existing conditions report, as well as with the renovation of French House. He may be stepping down from his official role as Junior Warden, but we will certainly be looking to him for counsel as we undertake the ongoing preservation of St. Mary's. Another vital role is that of treasurer, which, with his accounting skills, Frank has navigated with aplomb for nearly a decade. I could always count on Frank to quickly and accurately produce any figures I needed. He was also diligent in keeping the yearly budget up to date, making adjustments as needed throughout the year. And so Billy and Frank, on behalf of the vestry and congregations, I wish to express our deep and sincere gratitude for your ministry among us over the years. Thank you very much. Stepping into these roles, pending your vote, of course, respectively will be Dennis Trotter for Junior Warden and Joanne Hanson for Treasurer. The vestry will vote on the office of Treasurer. I have every confidence in their skills and look forward to working with them as we begin to emerge from the pandemic into a changed world. Also joining the vestry today will be Barbara Anderson, who served on the Rector Search Committee and who in better times sings in our choir, as well as George Robertson. Both Barb and George bring experience and talents that will strengthen our already diverse group. My thanks also go to Joanne Hanson and Bill Steinman. Joanne will begin her first full term after fulfilling a one-year vacancy left by the election of Lily Newhouser as Senior Warden last year. Joanne is also very ably heading up the Investments Committee, which has been hard at work to improve the performance of our endowment funds. And Bill will be starting his second full term on the vestry. So thank you for your continued commitment, Bill. Of course, I would be remiss if I did not acknowledge the blessing I have in Lily Newhouser as Senior Warden. Being a rector is not for the faint of heart, and so it is critical to have a strong partner by your side to help guide the ship through all kinds of seas. As of this meeting, she has completed her first year in the role, but like all things 2020, It seems like it's been a lot longer than that. Thank you, Lily, from the bottom of my heart. There is one more person I would like to thank for his tireless efforts on behalf of St. Mary's, and that is my husband, Pete. Many clergy spouses take a hands-off approach to parish life. But ever since we arrived, Pete has been the driving force behind revamping the website and the social media presence, editing the weekly newsletter, singing in our choir, and always being available to lend a hand. During the pandemic, he has served as a full-time volunteer, and in addition to the jobs I just mentioned, has been instrumental in getting our services online, editing recorded events such as 12th Night, putting together Sunday bulletins, serving as an acolyte and lector, coordinating with contractors at the church, and volunteering many hours at the food pantry. To say I couldn't do it without you would be the understatement of the century. Thank you. Most of what I have covered so far in my report has to do with the temporal side of things. Let's not lose sight of the spiritual dimension of church. After all, that is why we're here, isn't it? While I enjoy projects and the satisfaction of a job well done, my primary role here is as a spiritual and moral guide, not only to the parish, but to the community as a whole. It is never an easy job. As Archbishop Fulton Sheen once said, the priest is not his own. And while my life has been set aside for a special and very distinct role in the church, I am nevertheless still a human like us all. I do my best just like you. We are quite a mixed bag of people with differing views and persuasions, yet united in what really matters, the love of God and a desire to worship him in the beauty of holiness and to show our love for him by showing it to others. After an unimaginable year and facing an uncertain future, we all find ourselves feeling exhausted and a bit raw. Let us pray for God's grace to give us the strength to persevere and to bear one another's burdens with charity and forbearance. And let us pray for God's blessing upon the worship and work of this parish, that we may serve him in holiness, both now and evermore. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rick.
Thank you. So now, before we get to the results of elections, I would like to ask if there are any other reports, questions, or comments. I believe Sheldon has something.
First of all, I want to say how very happy I am and grateful to be back at St. Mary's again. As many of you know, I was associated with this parish decades ago under Father Ed Cromie. I remember coming here long ago to substitute at the organ for Pat Son. I also was able to play for a requiem under her guidance, which was wonderful. And I continue to be associated with the parish over many, many, many years. And to be able to come back and be the organist and choir master here means a great deal to me. I want to thank Father Rick and Pete, our senior and junior wardens and our vestries for the support you've given me, and from so many others of you who come up to me and thank me for the work I'm doing. As you know, the music program is kind of semi on hold right now. We have wonderful soloists in Aileen Sager and Alex Wise. We've had a real treasure in having a virtuoso young organist here, the way of Bruce Shu, who is working on an organ degree at Rice University now, and will undoubtedly become one of the major recitalists in this country, an amazing young man. The hallmark of the Episcopal Church, I think our calling card, is how we worship in church. Our buildings, the beauty of them, the beauty of our liturgy, the quality of the sermons we hear that reflect intelligence and integrity and truth, all come together. I remember when Dr. Robin Lever at Westminster Choir College, who was an Anglican priest from England and a great scholar and teacher, once said that when worship takes place and music is involved, it is not an add-on. It is all one ball of wax. It all works together beautifully. It's part of what it means to be an Anglican. Right now we need to find a new alto section leader and a new bass section leader, which is of course always a challenge in any situation, let alone the one we're in now. Once we're past the COVID, we'll certainly start looking for those two people. And I'd like to, I know that Father Rick and I are certainly on the same page with this. We want to build an Anglican choral program here that reflects the best of our tradition. And St. Mary's has so much to offer in so many ways. We certainly want the music of the church to be one of those calling cards about what we are, who we say we are, and what we do. But again, thank you. Thank all of you for your support. It means so much to me.
Thank you, Sheldon. We are, of course, very grateful for his ministry among us. And as he said, he and I are very much simpatico in the belief that the music and the liturgy and the preaching all go hand in hand, and they all have things to teach us. And, you know, one of the things I miss so much is singing hymns. I just love that part of church. And I know that we'll all be happy when that can happen again. But, you know, I always say if you have a favorite hymn, sometimes it's because of the tune, but just read the words. Some of the greatest poetry in the English language is contained within the pages of our hymnal, and some of the most profound theology as well. And it's all set beautifully to music. And so to have a partner in music ministry who understands that is a treasure for me. So thank you again, Sheldon. Are there any other reports, questions, or comments?
Father Rick, I'd just like to say one thing about, you know, I've come and gone and seen a lot of people come here and be here. I personally think that Sheldon's dedication and passion about music is probably something that I don't want to say I've never seen before, but very unique. And his professionalism and his love for what he does is really, I don't think people get to see that unless you're doing things behind the scenes. And of course, this year there hasn't been that much behind the scenes, but I just really want to acknowledge that. And the only other thing I want to say is, to your point, you know, we've always been a Christmas morning family, only because of what I think to be the solemnness of the ceremony and the day. And being on Christmas without joy to the world was not an easy thing. So looking forward to next year.
Absolutely. Well, Mr. Teller, would you like to reveal the results, the long-awaited results of the election?
Yes, so the election has been running for 1 hour, 2 minutes and 31, 32, 33 seconds. So I think we can safely close it. Yes, okay. So I'm ending the poll now. And you should see the results on your screen. Everyone has been elected handily, congratulations, with well over the 50% that's required.
Thank you, everyone who volunteers in so many ways, but especially thank you to the vestry, and thank you to those who are stepping into new territory with us, and those who are continuing to work in this very important ministry. And remember, vestry members, that once this meeting is concluded, we will have a very brief January meeting of the vestry. We need to approve the December minutes, elect the treasurer, and welcome our new members. Let us pray together in the words our Savior Christ taught us. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom and the power and the glory forever and ever. Amen. May the blessing, mercy, and grace of Jesus Christ be upon us all evermore. Amen. I hereby adjourn this meeting, annual meeting of the Corporation of the Parish of St. Mary's in Tuxedo.